Anne was leaving St. Lupin's. At some point that day, a cargo ship would make its annual stop at the orphanage to drop off a year's supply of dehydrated gruel powder, just add water, and other provisions. Any orphan with a passenger ticket would then be allowed to board and leave with the departing ship. Since the government cut off its orphan tax credit at age 13, the matron was only too eager to get rid of children she could no longer exploit. The ship was scheduled to depart at exactly 10 minutes past midnight, which was technically tomorrow, which was Anne's birthday, meaning she would be eligible to receive a ticket. So in less than a day, she would walk through St. Lupin's gates for the last time. Or, in child labor terms, Anne was roughly 23 chores away from complete freedom. There was only one problem. She had no place to go. Or, more accurately, she couldn't go to the one place she most wanted to go. As the morning sun attempted, more or less unsuccessfully, to penetrate the grimy dormitory windows, Anne quietly walked down the hallway and slipped inside her tiny shared bedroom. She closed the door equally as quietly and tiptoed the 4 steps to her bed, trying to avoid the floorboards that squeaked, which was especially difficult given that this included all of them. She took such care so as not to disturb the blanket-covered lump in the bed 4 steps in the other direction. The lump grunted loudly and mumbled, but remained asleep. Anne sat heavily on her bed, sending out a small puff of coal dust from her clothes. After a night spent working in the mines, her body ached for sleep, but there was no point even in lying down. Everyone was due in the front hallway in 15 minutes. Besides, with the excitement of her birthday, coupled with the unease of her coming departure from St. Lupin's, her mind was anything but sleepy. In an attempt to make herself presentable, she ran her hands through her thick curly hair several times, but, as usual, her hair had a will of its own. Then she tried to rub off some of the coal dust that seemed forever ingrained under her fingernails and in the pores of her dark brown skin, but she basically only managed to transfer dust from one place to another. With a sigh, she moved on to packing, which is easy when you have next to nothing to pack. Anne reached under the thin mattress and pulled out her few meager possessions. The first was a homemade pocket knife she'd built from various odds and ends. The rest consisted of several dozen slips of paper. On one side of the papers was printed the rejections from all the Quest academies to which she had applied. On the other side was the stated reason for the rejections: no proof of origin. More than anything, Anne wanted to go on adventures and ultimately to find her real home. First, however, she had to obtain an official license, but no academy would enroll someone who couldn't prove where they came from. In defiance of this, she had filled the rejection slips with sketches of people. The faces were different sizes, shapes, and colors, yet she'd given all of them one shared feature: yellow eyes, just like her own. Anne had never actually met anyone else with yellow eyes, but she knew they must exist because she herself must have come from somewhere. That was her one and only clue. To the knife and the papers, Anne added a third item from her coat pocket: a small, thin book with a tattered red cover. Every day after her shift in the mines, Anne would sneak into the boarded-up library, replace whatever book she'd taken the previous day, and unofficially borrow another one. She'd read hundreds of stories this way: tales of nobles, tales of pirates, tales of knights, and sometimes tales of noble pirate knights. One book had even contained a story about an accountant, which hadn't been very exciting, but it did help Anne understand how feeding orphans cheap food qualified as a charitable donation for St. Lupin's. "What are you doing?" asked a sleepy voice that came from the blanketed lump. "New book," said Anne. The lump rolled over and revealed itself to be a person. A pale, white-skinned girl, pores equally coal-ingrained, with light blue eyes and tangles of dirty red hair. The girl's name was Penelope. She had already turned 13 and was a full head taller than Anne.